Cornel West is running for president of the United States. He's a left-winger, very nice guy, apparently. I don't know him. Robbie George, who's a great conservative and is on faculty, I guess, where? Yale or Princeton? I can't remember. But anyway, he works with Cornel West and thinks the guy's a wonderful human being, but he's like a left-wing Marxist. The Democrats have taken to calling him a threat to democracy because he could pull votes away from Joe Biden. At this point, Democrats define threat to democracy as anything that could hurt their party. Jill Stein, the Green Party candidate, who, by the way, is now managing Cornel West campaign. Remember, she was also slammed and smeared as a Russian agent, just like Donald Trump. It turned out not to be true for her either. No one's ever apologized to her. The Democrats hate her. They blame her for helping get Donald Trump elected. Now they're after Cornel West. They don't like Robert Kennedy Jr. either. He's a threat to democracy. Anything that might be a threat to the Democrats' hold on power is a threat to democracy these days. That's how they define it. They really don't want a third party. They really don't want Cornel West, who's a black man, progressive, younger people like him on the Democratic Party side. Perhaps black voters will like him. They don't want it. He's a threat to democracy. I have to wonder, when do Democrats decide Joe Biden is a threat to democracy? When do Democrats decide Joe Biden is a threat to democracy? Democrats have defined threat to democracy as anything that might hinder the advance of the Democratic Party. And Joe Biden, polling shows, including the Democrats' own internal polling, is beginning to hinder the Democratic Party. One of those issues that gives a certain 60 and 70-something-year-old TV commentator priapism is in the early 1970s, the wise old men of the Senate going to Richard Nixon, telling him that he needed to resign for the good of the country, that he would be impeached, he needed to go, and so Nixon resigned. And every once in a while, you have the priapatic or whatever you call it. They can't sit well in their chair. It's like they've taken Viagra, and they're on television. And they just, we need the wise men of the Senate to go talk to Trump. We need the wise men of the Senate to go talk to Clinton. We need the wise men of the Senate to do something. They now want the wise men of the Senate to go to Joe Biden and say, psst, buddy, you're too old. Democrats are beginning to be more vocal in the fact Joe Biden said he was going to be a one-term president. He needs to be a one-term president. This is the top story this morning, the top story above the fold. You know, when I say above the fold, when you get a newspaper, it's folded in half, and the top story, the big story, is at the top of the front page. So when the fold over and the newspaper lays flat, it's what you see. The top story for the nation in the Washington Post is this headline today: anxiety ripples through the Democratic Party over Biden. And the subtitle: persistent concerns over Biden's age come amid a series of polls showing he's neck and neck with Trump. It's by 3 reporters. This series of political vulnerabilities, along with House Republicans announcing an impeachment inquiry and the Justice Department indicting Biden's son on gun charges, is now sending waves of anxiety through parts of the Democratic Party as some fret about whether the man who helped oust Donald Trump from the White House may not have the vitality at 80 to successfully prevent a return. And you got this most amazing quote is from Sharon Sweda, the leader of the Democratic Party in Lorain County in Ohio. This is an extraordinary quote for a Democratic leader to put on the record. Now, you need to know Lorain County is just outside Cleveland, and it is a prominent Democratic area of the state, and she's willing to be public with this quote. Y'all may need to sit down for this one. I cannot believe a Democrat of prominence. And if you're the Democratic Party chair of Lorain County in Ohio, you're a Democrat of prominence because of the swingy nature of that area of the state. You're a Democrat of prominence. And this is Sharon Sweda. This is her quote to the Washington Post. And I quote, "He's in a period of life where passing and death is imminent. We are all on a ticking clock. But when you're at his age or at Trump's age, the clock is ticking a little faster, and that's a concern for voters." Ma'am, Sharon, there's a thing called the Witness Protection Program. You might want to consider getting into it as quickly as you possibly can before someone in the Democratic Party straps some cement shoes on you and throws you into one of the Great Lakes. I can't believe a Democrat would go on record saying that, but she did. He's in a period of his life where passing and death is imminent. We're all on a ticking clock, but when you're at his age or Trump's age, that clock is ticking a little faster, and that's a concern for voters. Wow, she went there. And by the way, she's only saying what other Democrats are saying behind the scenes. Biden's allies are frustrated by the hand-wringing from an anxious faction of the party, and even as campaign officials point to the president's record of defying skeptics, they are strategizing internally about how best to combat the unmistakable nervousness. Let me play you one more exchange. This is Jake Tapper talking with David Axelrod, who is Barack Obama's top advisor, about the Gavin Newsom interview that Gavin Newsom did with Dana Bash. Gavin Newsom is becoming a thorn in the side of the Biden administration because he's clearly covets running for president and is hoping Joe Biden dies so he can get in the race.
Let me ask you the sodium panel thought question. I mean, he's out there, he's debating Sean Hannity, he's talking to Dana for an hour-long special, obviously very loyal to Joe Biden, obviously doesn't want to distract, but come on, he's primed and ready to go.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure the White House is very gratified for some of the things that he's saying. I don't know that they'd be as enthusiastic about his ubiquitous presence on the air. It's sort of like, just at the time when Democrats are concerned about their aging, spouse, here comes the young neighbor, young strapping potential partner.
Did you see the split screen?
Yeah.
That we were. I don't know I don't know if we were doing that on purpose, but it just looked like.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think that he knows he's a sophisticated guy. He knows that he's playing against the story right now. And, I don't think he's setting himself up to run in 2024. I actually agree with him, Jake, that I think Biden's running.
Right.
I think Biden's going to be the nominee.
Right.
But he's certainly getting a head start on 2028. I don't think there's any question about that.
This from the Washington Post. Interviews with more than 30 lawmakers, strategists, activists, and other Democrats show uncertainty persists. Many Democrats express steadfast support for the president's running for a second term, and no major figure has risen to challenge him in a primary. Several party leaders predicted that even voters who voice ambivalence about Biden will ultimately be animated to vote against the Republican choice, particularly if it's Donald Trump. But few offered confident assessments that Biden's stubbornly low approval ratings would rebound before next year. And many conceded that one of the president's most significant challenges is one he has no control over: his age. I am open and honest and candid about my views on Trump being the Republican nominee. No Democrat wants to be about Joe Biden. The reality is, as much as I prefer a different Republican to be the nominee, I think it makes it easier for us to take back the Senate, gain the House, gain the presidency. The reality is, Joe Biden is tied with Donald Trump. Joe Biden is having to spend millions of dollars now in September of 2023, more than a year before a national presidential election to boost his popularity with Democrats. He's running his ads on 60 Minutes. Republicans and swing voters aren't watching 60 Minutes on Sunday. They've just finished one football game. They're getting ready for the next one. He's trying to bolster himself with Democrats by running ads on 60 Minutes. That's not a good sign. Donald Trump could beat him. Without a penny being spent, Donald Trump is tied with Joe Biden in the polls. The Democrats have a problem. They want the wise men of the Senate to go to Joe Biden and say, Mr. President, it's time to step aside. Let us have a primary. Let us pick a new winner. But they can't do that. One, because Kamala Harris would demand their loyalty and she wouldn't get it. And two, how do a bunch of 80-year-old senators go to an 80-year-old president and say, dude, you're too old for the job, when he looks back at them and says, well, why aren't you too old for your job? They can't do it. They're not in a position to do it. And meanwhile, without Trump spending a penny, he's tied with Joe Biden. And I don't know if you heard me, but diesel prices are going up. Gas prices are going up. Hedge funds are starting to make riskier and riskier bets into the economy that are more and more likely to not pay off, causing economic problems, causing a recession, driving our economy into the ground. All as Joe Biden is gearing up for re-election. The Democrats have so many problems. And one, the leadership is in denial about the problems. Two, the base of the party recognizes the problems. But three, the only people who could persuasively make the case to Biden to get out are the old men of the Senate who themselves are so old and can't give up their own power. There's no way they can make the case to Biden that he's got to give up his. Of course, the media would rather focus on Republican problems. But I'm not the media. I can focus on the Democrats' problems. And we should save all this as a great I told you so for later, because my goodness, you can see what's coming. To quote Sharon from Ohio, he's in a period of life where passing and death is imminent. God have mercy on all of us.
When the world